I was working as a backup dancer when my addiction to baked ziti started. And on a backup dancer's salary, I wasn't making enough money to support my addiction. So I started turning tricks on the street and selling my body so that I could make some extra cash and score some baked ziti. Looking back on it now, I would say that was probably the start of when I had a problem, and I deeply regret it. Early on into my addiction, I was getting a lot of my baked ziti from a street vendor whose name was Linguini Dan. And I remember one day I went to Linguini Dan to get another hit of baked ziti, and he wouldn't sell me any. He thought I had a problem, and he didn't want to. He didn't want to encourage my problem. He didn't want to be an enabler. That's the word I'm thinking of. But I was very upset, of course. You know, in the addict's mindset, this was not acceptable. So I strangled Linguini Dan with a very long piece of spaghetti that I found nearby, and I stole all the baked ziti in his bodega. One day I was walking down the street, and I noticed there was this parked car, and inside the car there was a lot of what appeared to be baked ziti. So I broke into the car, I smashed the window, crawled inside, and discovered that it was not actually baked ziti. It was just a lot of pictures of baked ziti that this person had in their car. Of course, at that point I was in the mood for baked ziti, so I drove the car to the nearest Italian restaurant I could find and fed my addiction. Once I was in a stolen police car, and I was waiting outside of an Italian restaurant for someone to exit the restaurant with a takeout order. And sure enough, eventually someone did, and I pulled this person over pretending to be a police officer, and I explained that I pulled him over because he was a suspect in an Italian pasta crime. And the driver said, "Okay, well, what can I do to convince you that I'm not an Italian pasta criminal?" And I said, "Well, I need to search your vehicle to make sure that there's, no evidence of any pasta crimes." So he popped his trunk, I took a look inside and saw 36 buckets of baked ziti, which was, of course, his takeout order. And, he'd paid for it lawfully and everything. I convinced him that I had to seize these buckets of baked ziti as evidence so that I could clear him of these charges. And again, he agreed. So I took the buckets and we both drove off our separate ways. And I remember that night I actually ate all 36 buckets of baked ziti in one sitting, which was arguably my lowest moment. A few years ago, there was a woman in my hometown who was running for city council on a platform of increasing the city's pasta budget. And I voted for her 11 times, thinking that this would be a way I could lawfully obtain some baked ziti. She ended up losing the election and went into a pasta rehabilitation clinic. And I'm pretty sure she's still there to this day. I met up with one of my junkie friends once because I needed information about his baked ziti dealer. I myself needed a new baked ziti dealer. And as he was telling me who his dealer was, he actually went into a pasta overdose right in front of me. And I had learned a medical procedure that would, resuscitate him, that would save his life, which I had learned as a backup dancer. But it would be illegal for me to perform the procedure because I don't have any sort of a medical license. I'm not a physician or a doctor or anything like that. But I performed the procedure anyway because I needed information about his dealer. I probably would have done the lawful thing, which would have been to just let him die if I didn't need a new baked ziti dealer. But of course, my addiction demanded it. So I saved his life and performed the illegal medical procedure. I once broke into the home of a world-famous pasta chef. I'm not going to say who it is, but I broke into his home and I tied up his entire family and waited for him to get home. And when he did get home, I told him that he had 1 hour to make me 20 kilos of baked ziti that I could carry out in a briefcase. And if he failed to do so, then I would open-mouth kiss every member of his family. And it was a terrible thing to do, and I deeply regret it, and I want to make amends. But at that time in my life, I would have open-mouth kissed everyone in the world if it meant that I could get another hit of baked ziti.